Hey everyone, so today I'm really interested in chatting to you guys about ways for you to reduce plastic consumption in your household. And before I start, I wanted to tell you a little anecdote from my life. And so it was while I was at a rally, which would have been the year before the COVID-19 year. Nothing happened in COVID-19, well, nothing socially. And while I was at this rally, I heard from this wonderful speaker who was a guest speaker at the rally and said, although I am an environmental activist, I am still not doing everything that I need to do. I myself don't drive an electric car. And so I thought that was a really great example, and I wanted to share that with all of you because the truth of the fact is not everybody is doing everything they can possibly do, and that's the whole part of learning and growing and continuing to change and adapt and adopt new ways of doing things. So hopefully this video gives you some tips about how you might reduce your plastic consumption in the house. And I'll just, I guess, stick with some practical examples of what I do personally. So I guess getting into it, the general approach for sort of any sustainable concept, I feel, is hierarchical. So in this instance, similar to the waste hierarchy, what we want to look at is how do you reduce first through your decision making and consumption behavior. And so what we can apply here is probably the waste hierarchy approach, which not all steps are going to be relevant, but the steps in the waste hierarchy is prevention, reuse, recovery, recycle, and disposal. So let's start with step one, prevention. So how do we prevent bringing plastic into the boundaries of our household and our lives? Something that I like to do is I don't shop online very often. I will often wait for a while before I purchase an item, so I'm sure that I want that plus the various other things that come up along the way, and I buy them all at once. So that's usually from the one vendor. If I'm choosing to buy it, I'll try and buy it from the one vendor, and only after a few months where I really know that I want item A, B, and C, rather than buy item A in the first month, item B in the second month, and item C in the third month, and therefore have multiple packaging coming through into the boundary. So that's one thing, is to wait a little bit longer before you purchase an item and try to buy it all from the same vendor so that it all comes together. The other thing that I like to do is my decision making in when I actually go grocery shopping. So choosing the penne packet that comes in the cardboard box or the biodegradable packaging rather than the penne that comes in the plastic packaging. Similarly with the food choices, is buying, say if you like soup sachets, maybe the soup mix comes in a box or a container all as a bulk option. So purchase that rather than purchasing the ones that are individually packaged. Generally avoid items where they're individually packaged. Tea, for example, is a really good one. Try and go for loose leaf rather than the individual tea bags. It's so easy anyway to throw some loose leaf into your cup and strain it, or put it into a filter, whatever it is that you do. So choose that as an option. Choose the bulk option rather than the individually packaged option. So preventing that plastic into your life can happen so easily through your shopping choices. So something to consider before we move on is when you're deciding to buy an item, maybe rethink whether you really and truly need that item and whether that need can be supplemented through the things that you already have in your life. Or even better, if you really need it, find a way to buy it sustainably. So online through, to buy it secondhand, either through Gumtree or at an op shop. Whatever it is, really rethink your decision as to why you need that item and whether you really need it and whether it can be supplemented through your existing lifestyle. So that's something really important to think about. And then moving on to the next part of the hierarchy, it's about reusing items. So something that I like to do is I collect glass jars or containers or bottles that food has come packaged in, And so I don't collect all of them, but I collect quite a few of them, and I use them in the house while cooking, but I also use them for, my husband's used them in the tool shed to carry the nails, to separate out the different types of nails that he has. We've also used them while traveling to carry small food items and spices and condiments that we want to take while we're traveling. It's important to note that when you're making these sustainable choices, there are going to be times you're going to need to make accommodations while being more sustainable. So obviously glass jars are heavier to carry than, say, the mini plastic packagings that you might take for while you're traveling. But it's a trade-off. What you're doing is probably a much better option for the environment. So think about how you might reuse some of the items in your house. The other thing I have reused is my son's cloth diapers. So they're nice and washed, but what I did was cut them up and use them for sometimes cleaning the floor, some of it for use in cleaning the outdoor areas, and I think that's it. Cleaning the floor, cleaning the outdoor areas, and it's been really useful. They're perfectly good cloths. Why not reuse them for something that for the next set of the next purpose that it will have in its lifespan, rather than throwing it out. And so that's the second thing. The third thing I wanted to mention is I have collected boxes, as well as packaging boxes that I've received from gifts or from online shopping, as well as wrapping that I've received from gifts, or that our family has received from gifts. This happened a lot during Christmas. Unfortunately, too much packaging, but I took that, collected it, and I'm going to reuse that throughout the year, as well as at Christmas time. And so be it. If I have to use a Santa Claus wrapper for someone's gift for their birthday, then so be it. The point is, I got them a gift out of, the thoughts that I had in my heart for them, but the packaging doesn't match the day. But that's not important. I think what's important is you're considering how you might, sustainably give a gift, rather than buying new packaging each time you need to wrap a gift or create some art with your little one. You can use it for various things. So think about how you might reuse the items that come into your life. So just to recap here, we've talked about prevention and reuse. And before I move on to the next two steps, which I'm going to combine, I just wanted to say that although I am actually talking about some things that may not seem directly related to plastic, they usually are connected to plastic in some way, whether it's the way that they were packaged, or it's the small plastic beads that are used in the product themselves. So even say what I mentioned earlier about you reusing my son's old cloth diapers for wiping down the outside areas in my house, rather than buying a new cloth that's either got some plastic packaging on it, I am choosing to reuse an option that I already have in my household. So there's somehow always a connection to plastic, because plastic is so widely spread in our community. So please bear in mind that I may not always mention plastic directly, but it's generally a problem that is intertwined very closely with the way we consume and the way we waste our items, and the way we do things quite linearly. We take it, we make something, we use it, and we dispose it. So let's look at how we reuse things so that we can, while reducing our waste output, we also reduce our plastic consumption. And so the next two steps in terms of reducing plastic would be recycling and recovery, or upcycling, whatever we want to call it. How can we look at the items around our house that can be reused for another purpose? And so, perfect example, and I am going to include the image here. My husband grabbed all the waste items from the old shed that we broke down in our house, and rather than dispose of it in hard rubbish, he pulled that all together and made a new vegetable patch for me, which is incredible. So the whole thing is completely upcycled, or completely upcycled, I think. No, upcycle is not the word. It's been completely recycled. So I guess it's a good time to also define the difference. When you're recycling something, you're taking it and reusing it, or recreating the material to use it as something else. When you're upcycling something, it can be something that's already in its original form, maybe degraded of course over time, such as a table, and you're upcycling it into a new version of that table, so a better table. And so I'm sure there are plenty of things around the house, such as your old dining table, that you may no longer want to use. Rather than getting rid of it or sending it to landfill, unless you're selling it to somebody else, look at how you might reuse the wood for something else, or look at using the table outdoors, maybe as an outdoor table. So the veggie back to the veggie patch, that's probably the best example that I can think of in terms of how we have reused and upcycled the materials in our home. Okay, and I guess we have gone through these 4 steps that are most applicable to plastic consumption, and we can ignore the last one in the waste hierarchy. But what I wanted to do in terms of finishing off this video is just to kind of talk through a short list on some of the things, practical things that I do in my life that are helping me reduce the plastic consumption, in addition to what I've said already. So one is I take containers with me everywhere I go. And that's to get my takeaway in those containers that are reusable containers rather than the plastic takeaway containers that you get from the store. The other thing is I always have my coffee cup with me. I'm not allowed to I've given myself a rule that I'm not allowed to have coffee unless I am absolutely desperate, if I do not have my own cup. The third would be that I purchase my cleaning products as well, so both for the home as well as for the body, are in bulk packaging, either bulk or in cardboard packaging, or glass. So one of the three. Obviously sometimes the bulk ones do come in large plastic containers, but the fact that I get to reuse them because they're in bulk means that I avoid continuously buying new plastic items. So that's in terms of the household items. And so in addition, I also like to avoid straws whenever I go to a restaurant and order a drink, as well as taking my own bags, not just for grocery shopping, but also for clothes shopping. I like to avoid the bags that the shopkeepers like to put the clothes in and put that into my own shopping bag. In addition, I do also like to take with me reusable cutlery. It's I have I think it's Eco. I don't know. It's an Eco brand, but I have wooden fork, spoon, knife, chopsticks that I like to use, and straws if I'm really desperate. I have a metal straw as well. If I'm not too keen on straws, but yeah, I have all of that stuff. So whenever I'm out, say at a festival, it's much better to use my own stuff rather than take the plastic forks each time that I'm purchasing an item to eat. And so finally, I just wanted to say just one more thing in addition to the containers. I did say that take them when you're ordering takeaway, but the other thing is when you're packaging your food items in your house, say especially after a party that you've hosted, don't put glad wrap on top. Try to use either beeswax paper or a vegan wax paper, or just put it into a container and shut the lid. Simple. I have plenty of containers for that purpose. Plenty of glass containers. So try to avoid the plastic packaging in the food storage at home itself. So really think about the ways that you can reduce glad wrap and plastic packaging. So I really hope that this has been helpful for all of you, and I would love to hear of the ways that you've adopted some of these things into your lives, and please share with me anything that you do that I could learn from. I'd love to know more about how I can reduce plastic even further in my life. So thank you so much for joining me, and I hope this has been a useful video for you. Bye! So just when I finished making this video about plastic consumption, I realized when I went to my kitchen that I still have this roll of glad wrap. Now check this out. This is how much is left, and I've had this roll since I was married in 2013 as part of the many things that my mum gave me. This was one of them, the giant rolls of glad wrap, And I think this is still over half because I've barely used it, and the majority of the time it's been used by people that, you know, have come to my house to attend a party, and then I help them pack up and they've used plastic to cover it. And now the only purpose that I have for this is on the rare occasion that I bake a cake, and it's, you know, I don't have an enclosed cake container. I use this to cover the cake, prop it up on some matchsticks, keep it upright so that the cake is not in contact with any other food in my fridge. But yeah, that's essentially the only reason I use this. So just really interesting to see that once you kind of change your mind and decide that you no longer want to use plastic, or that you want to reduce it as much as you possibly can, it'll just come naturally to you, and plastic will just slowly get phased out of your life, which is incredible.